thank you once again for a really interesting talk and for honoring us with your presence. The question that I would like to ask is, do you think we're moving in the right direction, sort of as a global community, when we're talking about addressing the major problems of, food, providing basic services to people around the world, however we are going to provide them? Are we starting to get over the Garrett Hardin attitude of development? Are we moving in the right direction? In my own experience with a few development projects, I've seen that a lot of the NGOs are sort of taking a more community-based and bottom-up kind of attitude. At least on paper, I've seen statements from the World Bank and from groups like, international organizations that at least, pretend to be shifting towards that paradigm as well. In your experience, do you think we're learning some of these lessons from the past? Have we learned to move beyond Hardin, or are we still sort of stuck in the same rut?
Well, it's not just Hardin that we need to move beyond. So I don't blame this all on him. I start with him because everybody's read him and gives you. But I think that I make a distinction between permanent NGOs that have field sites where they're going to be there for a while versus the Bees After Honey NGO that is kind of a private corporation in disguise. And I've seen some NGOs taking on incredibly difficult, challenging problems and working with community. We've got a study in Oaxaca that what the NGO has done is tremendous in bringing technical knowledge about how to grow orchids and sell them overseas so you get more money in so the community can get the kids to school, and it's just a very, very important success story. But some of this is again in print. There was a very big project at the World Bank called Community-Driven Development, CDD. And it was just touted as being very important. But when an independent evaluation was made, they found that an awful lot of money went into, not into software, they went into hardware, building roads and building schools. And the way a school principal could get a new school was to go and get the people in the community to say, we need a new school. Well, what principal wouldn't want to do that? And when a team went back and looked at the schools, many did not have blackboards. Many had no books, no paper, no pencil. So there was a new school building, but nothing else. And so we have to, again, be a little careful about taking this as a panacea and then doing it fast and trivial.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just sort of as a follow-up question to that, a lot of the indicators of development and global health and whatnot, access to water, access to sanitation, amount of food that people have on a daily basis, things like that, in most places in the world they are going in the right direction. And I guess, would that be attributable to learning some of these lessons, or is that has to do with other factors?
It will have to do with a lot of different factors in different places. So we can't say globally we've all done X and now globally Y is occurring. You have to break that statistic up and look at it in terms of individual places. And there's some success places out there, really, but not all.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you again, and I'd like to say that your research is really your research has been really fantastic. But I was curious, how would your assessment, your research, kind of apply to transboundary biosphere reserves, opposed to ones within a sovereign nation? How does that make the management a little more challenging?
Well, if it's in really remote areas, it's easy for the two governments to get together and you get a staff and it can work. Michael Scone has done a very good study in South Africa of the peace parks. And he was looking at the process of developing the International Peace Park. And what he found was that in some places, and it was Kruger and one of the others had evolved kind of ways of working on the ground together, that had evolved. It wasn't because of the international negotiation. And then some other aspects had international top-down. And what he found is that the ground-up worked better for some questions, and the top-down negotiation worked better for others. But he is looking at the questions of robustness and resilience of those institutional arrangements over time. And this is very important. This is why time series work is so important. Because then you can create it in the first couple of years is great, but 10 years later, what happens?
Thank you very much.
Hi, I just want to thank you for coming. This is a great honor to have you here at Lafayette. I wrote my question down, but I think that I can just start by, you're a political scientist, and I think that you're...
I'm a political economist.
Political economist. And I think that your understanding of game theory is really nuanced. And your ability to understand that we need the kind of trust and how important that is, I think that's really nice to see. And I think that also, as a political economist, you've probably realized a while ago that there are many problems that necessarily must change in our current structure of our society if we're going to make a more peaceful, sustainable attempt at inhabiting this earth and ultimately surviving it. With population and pollution skyrocketing and our world becoming more finite, and I think that that's where the tragedy of the commons comes back in. So I guess what I'm asking is, have you thought about how we need to have that trust on a larger level if we're going to move past many of these problems that our society has? I think that it's an important application of both game theory and tragedy of the commons, because we are running out of a lot of time. We're running out. So, yeah, enlighten me.
I'm really urging us not just to wait around for international agreements, but to tackle as many externalities where there are positive returns at a local, regional scale as we can, so that we, at a local to medium scale, we can establish trust. And then we can find one community really doing a good job and another community starting, and then they can see, aha, we can trust one another and do something more and build up. So there are some very interesting innovations going on at state and county levels. And I just don't want to reject them. I want to encourage more and more and more. But we still need international. But just a top-down international, there are going to be an awful lot of people who have no trust and will just cheat like that. So we've got to be thinking about how, when we change rules, what will the people who we want to conform to those rules, how will they react to it? How do they trust one another? Do they have a chance of seeing one another, etc.? And it adds it adds quite a bit to our analysis.